very excited now to bring onto the show Laura Becker. Laura is the author of Surviving the Trans Myth. We have this new movie that's coming out, Identity Crisis, partnering with Charlie Kirk and TPUSA. Laura, at the age of 15, discovered transgenderism online, ended up injecting testosterone, ended up having a double mastectomy, ended up transing herself or being transed, and then coming to regret it. And the left doesn't want you to hear these stories, so we're so happy to bring Laura on. Thank you, Laura, for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
We don't have a ton of time, but I do want to cover your story because it's just a roller coaster. How'd you get into it? How did you fall into transgenderism? How long did you think this was a good idea? Did the promises of transgenderism pay off? Ultimately, obviously not. And how'd you get out of it?
Well, to summarize all that, I was always a non-conforming kid. I was a tomboy. I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, like so many of the kids that are vulnerable prey to the ideology. And inevitably, I found it on Tumblr. I found it on social media in high school. And, you're isolated. You're a quirky kid. You don't fit in with girls or boys. And you're looking for an answer to your distress. I was severely depressed, anxious. There was abuse in my home. So there was just a panacea promised to me through the transgender ideology that I could find liberation and find my true self and happiness and inner peace. And so I found it when I was about 15 online. That was validated in my high school, in the gay straight alliance clubs, that sort of thing. By the time I got to my freshman year of college at 18, it was everywhere. I was taking, the women and gender studies courses, queer theory, all of that. And I was validated by my professors who actually instructed me of where I could get testosterone for free. Sadly, at 19, I was very suicidal, had a lot of undiagnosed trauma that I was coping with the best I could. The ideology promises that if you hate your body, if you don't feel comfortable as your sex, the solution to that, the only solution for gender dysphoria, is to transition with hormones and surgeries. And so that's what I thought was necessary to save my life. I ended up getting my breast cut off at the age of 20. No, that didn't really help. And 2 years later, I ended up detransitioning after I got properly diagnosed with PTSD from child abuse and also from the transition itself. And so it was a wake-up call, to say the least, that I'd been living a lie. And, that lie lasted for, 4 to 6 years. I wasted a lot of my youth in this cult, basically. And so since about 2019, I've, detransitioned. It's kind of an ongoing process, but I just turned 28. And so for about the last 6 years, I've just been speaking out about this. And it's an issue that's been exploding, hence the need to talk about it now.
What do you say to the leftists who argue that rates of trans regret are actually relatively low? And so what they'll say is, oh, I'm so sorry in your case that you regret cutting off your healthy breasts and you regret that all of the adults in your life who should have been helping you, that they got it so wrong and, whoopsie daisy. But, for most people, they don't regret it and it really does help them. So I guess you got to crack some eggs to make an omelet.
Yeah, that's a very gaslighting term, or should I say argument. The transgender ideology and the activists have a lot of myths, hence why I call my book Surviving the Trans Myth. I mean, it's an entire mythos around this. And that's one of the most prevalent and destructive lies, the suicide myth, that number one, if you don't transition, you will kill yourself. And that ironically, if you do transition and you get hurt and actually get trauma from it, oh, well, it doesn't matter. And, what I would say to those leftists is you claim to care about mental health. You claim to care about trauma and the most vulnerable in society. But when we actually come out and say, hey, I was desperate and seeking help and this was promised to me, now I've suffered medical and mental harm, you're abandoning us. So I would say you're actually being a hypocrite, and that's not very progressive of you.
Text Knowles, Knowles, to 989898. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, and regulation changes. Learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. Birch Gold, the only gold company I trust, is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. You know him. Get your free copy along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold. Text my name, Knowles, to the number 989898. The national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the debt continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar. I have a fair bit of my portfolio in gold, and I'm glad I do, especially when the stock market entered the longest losing streak since 1974. Text Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898 for your free copy of the Ultimate Guide to Gold in the Trump era. There is no obligation, only information. With an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, countless 5-star reviews, thousands of happy customers, you can trust Birch Gold. Text my name, Knowles, KNWLES, to 989898 today. It's certainly not progressive. It's certainly, or maybe it is progressive. Maybe progressivism is really as nasty as we all think it is. But in any case, it's certainly not rational. I agree with your point too on the mythos of it, which is, it's not that transgenderism is offering just some little surgery or some little drug. Transgenderism is offering an account of human nature that is radically different from the traditional account, and I think the reasonable account. They're saying that your identity, your soul, I guess, has nothing to do with your body. I mean, so you fall into this through Tumblr. You're not the first person I've spoken to who has said that. You then end up working through your trauma. You then end up working through some mental issues like autism, as so many people who are trans-identifying are afflicted with. What accounts for the spike in the trans identity? The numbers have gotten insane. I think 30% of Zoomers identify as LGBTQ. Either Alex Jones is right and there's something in the water, or this is cultural, or it's both. What is it? Is it that just a ton of kids are abused? Is it that a ton of kids are autistic now? Is it something in the water? What is it?
I think Alex Jones might be right about some of that. We have more to figure out.
He was proven right about the frogs, actually.
Yeah, right. So I'm very open now. Obviously been peaked and red-pilled pretty hard on all this. From my observation and anecdotal, study of my peers detransitioning, I would say definitely the social contagion aspect online. A lot of kids are basically programmed to be disassociated from their bodies by being in a hyper online culture, especially the younger ones like Gen Z, Gen Alpha. And that coupled with the lack of meaning, right? You said it was a philosophical framework, the mythos. I do believe that the religious decline and even, just a spiritual belief decline. I'm an existentialist, so I take more of a philosophical framework. But even having some kind of groundedness in reality, in a larger connection to the universe and through your body, through biology, there's an inherent disconnect that we have when we're hyper online. And then when we have no sort of shared cultural values to understand what a male and a female should be or are, to even just basically accept it. And the disconnect and the loneliness and the lack of existential meaning is causing a mental health crisis. And not to mention the unhealthy eating and the issues with social media showing, basically programming kids to have body dysmorphia. It's happening even for men, even for boys. They're, looks maxing and, having disassociation from their bodies. So I would say primarily social contagion spreading online, social contagion being, seeing other kids and young adults who say, oh, this is great. You should be trans. And then not having any stable foundation to question that and rely back on it.
Such a good point, even just really basic on meaning. If you're told from a young age nothing means anything at all and it's all kind of pointless and life is just an absurdity and a sick joke and you're going to flit around flopping in the breeze until one day you turn to worm food and take a dirt nap. Hey, kid, why are you so sad? Hey, why are you so confused? Did you hear yourself before? Such a basic point. You add on to that all of the programming, as you call it, with social media. You show people images that are unrealistic. You encourage them to engage in behaviors that deny the importance of the body. Yeah, no wonder. You've put it in a very good way, Laura. I now kind of feel stupid for asking the question. These days you think, how could people not have all of these body problems? We've got to leave it there. The book is Surviving the Trans Myth. The movie is Identity Crisis, which will be on Daily Wire Plus. Laura Becker, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Oh, man. Huh? That was good. That was good. You enjoyed that clip, huh? I enjoyed providing you that clip. And so if you want more of them, you got to ring the bell and subscribe.